Hey everybody, we have a new sponsor and a special deal for our listeners of Karen Isn't Always Right. If you have any photos or documents that you need to scan, or videotapes, audio tapes, or film reels that you need to import, you should check out avgearguy.com. If you mention the name Karen Isn't Always Right when you order, you're going to get 5% off, and a portion of your order is going to help support the podcast Karen Isn't Always Right. All of those formats degrade over time and are sitting ducks in the case of fire or theft. Why not convert it all to digital? All your memories can be stored safely on the cloud or even a hard drive that fits in your pocket. AV Gear Guy has over 30 years of experience with all kinds of media, and they can accept orders from anywhere in the U.S. Don't forget to mention the name of Karen Isn't Always Right and get 5% off. For more details and to book, visit their website at avgearguy.com. That's avgearguy.com. Hello, everybody. It's Christopher here again with another episode of Karen Isn't Always Right. My guest today is Shane Householder. Shane currently works in the training department for AMC Theatres. He and I became friends back in 2011, back when he had the impossible task of being my mentor as I transitioned into the GM ranks with AMC when I joined the company. Shane takes us through his career as he bounced all over the country through the years to include New Orleans, New York City, and even my hometown and the suburbs of Kansas. A great guy with a ton of experience and knowledge. Here's Shane. What's up, Shane?
Not much, Chris. How are you, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing today?
I'm good. Surviving one day at a time, one step at a time. It's odd times we live in. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, you said it, man. This is by far the craziest time I think I can recall in my life. And I think I told you, like, I transitioned into a different location literally right when all of this started. So I knew that starting on Friday the 13th was going to be fortuitous somehow, and here we are. So
It's all your fault. It's
I
all
know,
your
man.
fault.
So sorry. So sorry.
No, hardly. No, it's yeah. I'm excited to be here. And this is my first podcast. So
Well, welcome to Karen Isn't Always Right, man. I really appreciate you coming on. You're one of the folks out there that has been really engaged with it, and you're always liking my posts, and you've shared a few things, and that's always very much appreciated. So I thought it was just only natural to have you on. And do you want to share kind of who you are and how we know each other?
sure. I am Shane Householder. I don't mind sharing my full name. I got nothing to hide. How do we know each other? We both work for AMC Theaters many years ago. It seems like many years ago, and as I was preparing for this, I'm like, when did I meet Chris? I don't know. I don't. Seems like we met in the Kansas City area, maybe at some meeting, but it could have been in where, Omaha.
Yeah, you were. So we met in 2011. This was it was a crazy time in my life. So the dates are very clear to me. Yeah, I took over the Oakview 24 in Omaha,
Right.
and you, unfortunately for you, you were assigned to me as my mentor.
Oh,
Yeah, because
sorry for you. It's
yeah,
tough.
yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, man. It's so hard to transition from one company to another, And it's I gotta tell you, like you were very, very helpful. Just trying to get as I was trying to adapt to because look, the company I was with and AMC, they just do things so dramatically different, and the focus is
Yeah.
different and stuff like that. And so it was really challenging for me to come on board, and especially a 24 screen is my very first theater as a GM with that company. It was a big jump. I mean, I was one I was
Right.
for, but certainly like just a lot to adapt to. And my predecessor, at least in my opinion, didn't help at all as far as transitioning me. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was just different. And so you were helpful for no other reason sometimes than just have somebody to like vent to.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember is, is we certainly had a lot in common in that we both ran movie theaters for our entire lives. We were at similar age. I don't know, at some point you might be still fit and athletic, whereas I was at some point and then hadn't been and always try to get there. But so we had some things in common,
Yeah.
and I don't know, we just hit it off, and it's one of those where we could go 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years and not talk, and then if I needed to call you for something for any reason, and I certainly have,
Yeah.
um, it, I don't hesitate because I know I'll get a straight answer, but it's not. I don't know. It just clicks with me. It works for me, and you know, yeah, you're one of those people I'll probably always be in touch with, um, for for as long as I can because we just connected.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise. I've always felt the same. And just, like with several good friends that I have, it's cool when a lot of time can go by and then suddenly you reconnect and it's like no time went by, like
Yeah,
when you visited out here, got a chance to grab a drink and yeah, that kind of stuff. And I got to
right.
tell you, like the very first convention, well, really the only convention I went to, because I didn't stay with AMC for very long. You're like the only person I knew. So it sucked because I'm like, how those can be. They're very clicky. And
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's like that with my company now. And I'm thankful that I guess I'm part of a clique. But back then I had you.
That's was that the year we got the iPads?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And I'm just like, I'm trying to be mindful about not following him around like a puppy dog and try to make new friends. But man, I was just telling somebody this story the other day, that at that convention I actually met Joe Perry, because it was one of those nights where I wasn't hanging out with anybody, so I was just in the bar at the hotel. I forget what hotel we were, the Renaissance, I think, in LA and Hollywood.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was just hanging out in the bar, and there was this band playing cover songs, and so I was just standing at this table, and there was a drink sitting there, but nobody was around. It's like whatever, and I'm watching this band. I'm like, that dude looks familiar, and they were really, really good. And then they finished their song. The guy comes over, and sure enough, that dude was Joe Perry, and so we ended up talking for a while, and he bought me a drink, and then 10 minutes later gets in a Ferrari and leaves. So I was like,
Ah,
that was my moment. I also met Ron Jeremy that same night. So
hey.
yeah. Needed to shower after that.
What a fun story to tell. No, so 2011. So we've known each other about 9, 10 years. For me, I've been with AMC my entire career, which is 26 years. I started on April Fool's Day, so April 1st, easy to remember. I guess the joke's on me, 26 years.
So what year would that have been?
94.
Okay. So I started my original stint with AMC started in 89 at a theater. Well, no, my second theater was one that you've run.
Yeah, Ward Parkway.
Ward Parkway, yeah. So I
So
started.
you started when you were like 12.
15, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Just a pup, yeah.
Yeah, and I was much older than that. And yeah, I think it was right away. I remember it very vividly. I was working in the concession stand because that's where everybody starts. I'm selling food. And I don't know, Saturday night, I'm looking out in the lobby and there's the manager talking to the GM. And I'm just one of those people like, I could totally do that. And I'm looking at them, they're just standing there doing nothing.
Yep.
I'm like, but it wasn't that. I was like, this is, all we're doing is selling food and cleaning shows. It's not rocket science. And then many years later, I still look back at that. And I'm like, yeah, I remember doing that. And, what was it? Eight states and countless locations. And
do you remember how many locations you've run total?
I want to say it's, oh boy. Can I just say them out loud?
Yeah.
Let's see. New Orleans, the Galleria 8, and then where did I go from there? I went to Houston, to Willowbrook 10, which now there's a Willowbrook 24, and I worked at a couple locations there. That was when the megaplex era started. So we were building these
Monster.
20, 24, 30 screens.
Yeah.
And I wound up working at a 24 screen, and I think on one day we opened a 20, 24, and a 30 screen theater.
I think I remember that actually.
It was just insane. It was around the Titanic time.
I've still never seen.
Yeah. I've never seen Titanic because it's just one of those that I remember how big it was. I remember how busy it was. I was in charge of. Yeah, I was in charge of building up every print there, and I'm like, I'm never going to watch this movie no matter what.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So then from Houston, I went to. Well, I became a GM there. I was there for maybe 4 years. I became a GM at a little rinky-dink, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Tallahassee, Florida. Met a good buddy of mine. Worked for him for a couple of years. Went back to Houston. 30 screen theater. 30 screens. My busiest day was 21,000 people.
Whoa, my busiest was 19. Dang.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it doesn't really matter.
It's just people everywhere.
Yeah, you're just like, how do I get through this? And we did 2.3 million people that year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot. I mean, and I've got tons of stories I'll tell you all about. Then from Houston, I went up to Minnesota, and we had just bought Megastar. So we had done some transition. I ran a Megastar location. Then I went out to Seattle and opened a theater out there. I was there for I was in Seattle for 10 months. Won GM of the year, and then went down to Miami, which is the longest move in company history. I was only in Miami for 6 months, literally unpacking my last box Sunday night, and vice president of operations calls and says, "Hey, you want to move to New York?" Like, I guess. So because we had done the Lowe's transition, the Lowe's merger. So moved up to New York, worked in New York, had a couple of the big locations up there for 4 years, got married, had a kid, needed to be somewhere where I could let the kid play outside that wasn't Central Park or the concrete. So we moved to the Kansas City area, and here we are.
You ran Empire, right?
I did, Empire and Lincoln Square. So
you ran both.
I did 2 years each. Lincoln Square was certainly, they're both unforgettable. Lincoln Square had so many premieres. Like we had the world premiere of The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So Christian Bale, Morgan Freeman, just some amazing people you meet there.
There's an executive in my company that used to run Lincoln Square.
Who's that?
Art.
Oh, yeah. That was before, I think Jeannie Nardone, who works for us, worked before him, or I don't know, something like that. Yeah. I've heard the name.
That's a crazy busy theater for a 13 screen theater.
It is. It was, at some point, it was I don't know if it was it was the only theatrical IMAX screen in the country.
Yeah.
So they had IMAX, at the aquarium or the science center. But this was the only theatrical IMAX location. The screen is 8 stories high. And I say that to people and they're like, oh, all right. At some point, it's at some point we thought we had a guy sleeping in the catwalk, like a homeless guy was in the catwalk living up there.
Oh man.
So they're like, hey, we should go check that out. I'm like, all right, I'll climb up there. Yeah, I got about halfway up that ladder. I'm like, yeah, no, pass. If he's up there and he's living on it, good for him.
Good for him, yeah.
I'm not going. And it's just sort of how it was. But yeah, that every time I walk into that particular auditorium, every time I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Kind of puts the others to shame.
No doubt, and not even funny. At some point, I remember, it's obviously this huge 70 millimeter projector, but they weren't making as many IMAX films as they had in the past, or they hadn't made as many IMAX films back then like they do now. There's always a new one coming out. Well, back then, you could go 4, 6, maybe even 8 weeks and not have anything.
Yeah.
So
same thing in there.
Yeah, we just leave one thing, or every once in a while we bring something back. But I remember there was a really long stretch of time, and I can't remember what movie it was, but we needed the seats. So we had a 35 millimeter projector in there. We could show 35 millimeter movies, and it wasn't against the contract or whatever. So we put it in there, and then you throw this 35 millimeter picture on this 8, you just can't blow it up enough. It gets fuzzy. It literally gets fuzzy. So we're showing this little 35 millimeter on this huge screen. I'm embarrassed. It would be like, it'd be like watching YouTube on your phone, but put it up where your TV is. You're like, what is this? Like, yeah, it was a joke. But it was just 1 week, and then whatever, we moved on.
Did anybody complain about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the vast majority of people, I want to say, we tried to get out ahead of it. Like when we sold tickets, we're like, look, this presentation is not IMAX. It's not going to be, but people get in there and they're like, this is a joke,
Such a dramatic difference. Yeah.
Right. And as we talk about the Karens, I don't remember any specific Karen incidences about that. But that IMAX was so big, and you want to talk about a bad seat in the front row.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, people would, and there was a huge pit, Chris, there was a pit that was probably 2 stories deep of nothing. And then the seats started, and the slope was very steep. Mm-hmm. So it was stadium seating, like you'd see at an aquarium.
Yeah.
But people would sit in that front corner seat, and they'd be like, this is a joke. I'm like, and that's back when tickets, a $10, $12 ticket was, mid, 2008, 2007. Like, this is crazy. But, in general, it was still such a dramatic experience that people are like, yeah, I'll pay whatever.
Yeah. I knew of a theater that had a premium large format, and it was similar to that, where trying to sit in the front row, you can't see the entire screen. And at one point, this company had to just block off that front row and just couldn't see tickets anymore, because it was just that terrible,
Right.
Because every single time they would just want their money back. And so it's like, why even bother?
Right. Yeah. And the other thing in New York was, unions. So we had, union projectionists. I think that's fairly well known. I think they had some of those in Chicago as well. Yep. But at Lincoln Square, we had union crew.
Oh, wow. Really?
So, yeah. So all of our crew were union. And as soon as they came on, they had to fill out their union card. And I remember the toughest thing about that was, if you sent people home, like it's a slow night, you either still had to pay them, but you had to send them home by tenure.
Oh.
So the newest person had to go first, and if they didn't want to go, you went to the next person. But if the most tenured union person didn't want to go, you had to pay them, at least 4 hours.
Yeah. That sounds like California laws in general now.
Yeah. It was wild times, but it brings me, the unions bring me to a story that at Empire, we had, still back in the 35 millimeter days, we had, what was that movie? Precious? I don't know if you remember it, but the opening scene is very graphic, and I think she's being taken advantage of, and there's by her father or stepfather. Well, I think we also had, I don't know if it was Pirates of the Caribbean, or maybe it was Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr.
Okay.
So we wanted to do a print move.
Oh, no.
With those two. Yeah, you know where this is going. So So my senior manager, who's a good friend of mine, Susan, who's a good friend of mine, she was 8 months pregnant at the time. She does the print move, makes the changes in all the systems, and she forgot to tell the projectionist to switch the movies. So sure enough, I get a call on the radio, Shane, we're going to need you in this auditorium. We started the wrong movie, and there are some really, really upset parents. And I look, and Susan comes in my office, and she's like, that is totally my fault. I'll take care of it. Again, here's this 8-month pregnant. She's probably 5'3", 5'4", she's tiny. And in New York, it's all vertical. So we were on floor 3X, and this movie's on floor 6. So the fastest way there is through the fire
the stairwell.
Stairs. Yeah, the stairwells. So she goes up the stairs, but the way the stairs are is, they're both up and down, but there's double sets of stairs
passing across each other or whatever.
Yeah, but to get over from where we were to where she needed to be, she needed to climb over some railing, and I wasn't thinking at the time. I'm getting my getting all ready to go down and getting my radio, and she's running up there, and by the time I got there, she's like, everything's okay, and my supervisor comes out and says, Shane, you just missed it, man. This was a work of art. She walks in. These people are furious that their kids just saw this very graphic, violent scene. And here comes this little tiny 8-month, huge, pregnant lady waddling in like, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I forgot to tell the projectionist. My supervisor's like, they were apologizing to her. Oh, it's okay. It's sorry. Go sit down. And why are you working? So I get there. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was just waiting because I feel like around that time something similar had happened, and it was in the news. Mm-hmm. Like somebody had said, they started Precious, and instead of this kids movie, and all these kids get traumatized. And
definitely hit the news for different companies.
Yeah. So every time I see her, we both work together now, but every time I see her, I mean, we're really good friends. And I always, thanks for being there. I will always call you if there's a problem. Yes, but so no Karens in that situation. But
you didn't get yelled at for making your senior manager go, you know what I mean?
Right.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Look at what you've done. Yeah, so I would have went in there as a bald guy, and they would have raked me over the coals, and I need everybody's name and number, and man, it's tough, and I'm sorry if I'm all over the place.
No, you're good. You're good.
I listened to your call with David, the podcast with it, and you gave me the shout out from Ward Parkway, not directly, but you got a friend that works there. And that certainly made me think of a Karen moment when I was there. And not only that, but then looking back at just some of your podcast titles, like the anxiety that comes with it. Mm-hmm. And this one individual, so lady at Ward Parkway, and she had complained, to me about something. I think it was, the freestyle machine didn't taste right, and she wanted a refund, and I ruined her experience because of this way so not only was the soda bad, but then her movie was bad because she couldn't enjoy the soda. So I remember giving her passes and a refund, and so sorry. Then she was back, within 2 weeks, and I remember it was a slow Wednesday because, again, my ops supervisor was coming to visit. She was the only person in the lobby. And she came out and she's like, she knew my name. Obviously, we wear name tags, but she knew my name. She's like, Shane, I got a problem. And I said, of course. But again, I try to, what can I do for you? She's like, so we just bought tickets. The guy sold us the wrong seats. So I want a refund, and I want, popcorn and soda for free. I'm like, it's Wednesday. I'm like, well, where do you want to sit? She's like, I want to sit in D, and he gave me E. So it's literally one row. I'm like, well, I'll just switch you. You sit wherever you want. I'll just walk. No. I want a refund. I'm like, I'm not going to give you a refund when I can fix it. Well, it was because he made a mistake, and then she starts, and I don't have time to. I'm like, you don't have time. You're getting food. There's nothing. Well, if he's going to screw up, and okay, I'll talk to him. Maybe he misunderstood D and E, and she's going off. And my ops supervisor is walking up, and he can see I'm talking to this lady, and it's not going well. And she says, well, who's your supervisor? Now I could have said, oh, there he is. Of course, I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
But I told her who he was, and I gave her like
in the building at the time.
Yeah, like literally walking up the stairs, like, but he was in plain clothes, so she didn't know. But this is what I would. He kind of there's a column there in the lobby. He kind of sort of he wasn't behind it, but he wasn't out in the middle of the lobby. So he's sort of hiding behind that, and she's asking for his name. Gave her his name and phone number. I gave him, the 800, service line, because that's what we do. Yeah. And she's like, no, I want his direct line. I'm like, look,
this is what you're getting.
I have to give you this, and then they'll give you whatever they want to give you. But this is the proper procedure. I'm following the rules.
Right.
So she wound up leaving. She got a refund and left. And as she's leaving, of course, she's like, I'm never coming back.
Of course not.
Yeah, we know how that goes.
Yeah.
Chris, I kid you not, I saw her the next weekend, and she just gave me a dirty look, didn't say anything to me, and just went to her movie. And I want to say maybe several months later, I don't know if she complained. She might have complained, but she didn't ask for anything. She said, oh, the restrooms are atrocious. Thanks.
Yep.
But I remember telling my supervisor what had just happened, and he's like, well, that sounds ridiculous. And then she did wind up getting his number, or she must have called like just the corporate office number, the random, and got connected to him. And he even called me and said, yeah, she just called, and I told her she needed to follow the rules and call that 800 number, and then I would call her back. So that's one of those where it's when you have the backing of your supervisor, and they're like, that makes things a little better. But
that's really funny.
It's wild times, wild. I mean, some of the other stories when I was in New York. Again, I got a bazillion stories. It was probably within my first week or two, my supervisor comes to me and says, do you want me to get the itching powder for the stairs? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I thought you said itching powder. And he says, yeah, there's some homeless people, they're camping out on the stairs, so we just put itching powder so it deters them. I'm like, no, dude, I don't know who told you this was okay or where this itching powder is. Did you get it from a gag book? That's what I thought. Where do you get itching powder from? But yeah, so at Lincoln Square, they had these, they were in the lobby. It's just stairs to get up and down the different levels, open to the guests and really open to the public. Mm-hmm. And yeah, every once in a while, some homeless people would just come in if it was too cold or too hot, and here's some free air condition or heat. And very few people use the stairs because we had escalators or an elevator. So yeah, but I'm like, dude, can you put itching powder on the stairs, man? Some little kid walks by and
the liability.
Yeah.
I feel the complaints already.
Right. Where'd I get this? But in New York, I don't know. Where'd I get this?
Do what you gotta do. I don't know. I feel like you'd have to lay a lot down.
I don't know, man. And that was good. That supervisor worked for me, at Lincoln Square, and then I brought him with me to Empire because he was born and raised in New York, so he knew everybody and he knew the cops, and yeah, it's always good to have a connection,
Yeah.
and he always had a connection.
I would have thought if he came
So
to me, if
yeah,
it was my first week, I would have thought he was fucking with me. They'd be like, "You're kidding, right? Like this is a joke on me because I'm the new guy, right?"
see, and talk about gullible, and I got stories of gullibility out the wazoo, but I could just tell right away that he wasn't that guy. Like he wasn't much of a kidder. He's very serious. But yeah, no,
That wasn't Jamal,
I've been
was it?
no
No.
Oscar Amador, yeah, and he, but he was a good guy. But talking about being gullible, you know, as we talk about service, and anybody that's listening to this, they're like, I don't know, what's this guy? You know, he's 26 years and he's anxious about guests. Yes, and it's probably because I guess my guest service philosophy was and sort of always has been, you know, the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And I know at some point we talked about you know, as a company, talked about the platinum rule: treat others how they want to be treated, right, or better than. Yeah, but new as a manager, I was, you know, I was just taught, just take care of the guest, you know. I mean, were you, and maybe you guys still do. I mean, we used to walk around with pads of passes in our coats.
Yep. I
And
did for sure when I was in California. I don't even,
yeah,
but yeah.
I mean, that was just how it was, you know. You got a problem, here's
Yeah,
passes,
here you go.
come back.
Here you go. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. We're making it rain passes.
That's right.
And in Houston, I'll never forget, because I was new. It was a megaplex, new to the megaplex, fairly new as a manager, maybe a year or two in as a manager. And guy comes up to me, and you're going to know what this is right away. Guy comes up and he says, you know, I was at the movies yesterday and some kids were kicking our seat and we had to leave. It was an emergency and we were embarrassed, and I don't have my tickets.
There were 7 of us. Yeah.
Yes. and my initial thought was, oh man, we really screwed this up. You know, this guy had a bad experience. And I think he said there was 3 of us. And then he's like, we're going to come back later tonight. Can we see? And I'm like, well, what were you seeing? Yeah. And he's, yeah. And he's like, oh, do you remember? I said, yeah, sure. I'll take care of you when you come back. I'll be here. So he comes back, and then 3 turned into 7. He's like, well, there were 7 of us. Oh, okay. And I don't know, again, new to it. Everything was new. You know, the megaplex was new, me being a manager, and I'm just giving him everything. Yeah, 7 passes, you got it. He's like, we had food too. I'm like, oh, go ahead, go in there. I'll let them know. You just get whatever you want. And I remember my crew lead's like, Shane, you need to come up here. Yeah. And so I go to the concession stand. They're like, he's ordered $100 worth of stuff. I'm like, wait, what? And then he's like, oh, that's okay, I'll pay for it. He breaks out, he's got like hundreds of dollars. So then another manager sort of catches me on my way back to the lobby, and she's like, all right, Shane, let me tell you what just happened. You just got taken. Yeah, you just got taken by some gypsies, and it's what they do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, I felt so bad. I wanted to get revenge. And, you know, I kid you not, probably within that month, the same guy comes to me and says, hey, Shane, yeah, I was here last night. I had to leave. I wound up going to New Orleans for the day. Can I get tickets? I'm like, yeah, can you prove that you were here? I lost it. I threw it away. He's like, I was in New Orleans. I'm like, can you prove you went to New Orleans? He's like, yeah, I got my plane ticket in my car. I'm like, oh, okay, go get it. As he's leaving, like, I think the cops were there. I'm like, yeah, he can't come back anymore.
Yeah.
So the cops start following him. Then he calls. He's like, Shane, you're an asshole, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right. So, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Those lessons early on, yeah, do you almost feel like, what's the
well, it's hard not to become cynical, I think.
Yeah, cynical. You lose faith in humanity. You're like, oh, everybody just wants something.
But you have to balance that with, the responsibility that you have, from the company's perspective to take care of the guest, but also that responsibility to not let us
Right.
get ripped off. But it's like, well, where's that line, and I mean, it got so bad at one of the locations I was at. I mean, we definitely started demanding proof of purchase on everything. And if somebody was like, oh, well, I threw my tickets away, and our response would essentially be, well, I guess you're not going to do that again. Because I'm just letting you know, our policy is we have to see proof of purchase, and you can thank the last guy that took advantage of us for us having to do
Right.
that. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it's going to be. And it created some short-term pain, from having to deal with a lot of complaints about that initially, to eventually, you know how you can train an entire market basically on the expectations, and word gets out and people understand. But it just took a little while to get people to the point where it's like, well, they know either A, they're not going to get away with it, or B, the legitimate people know that they need to hang on to the receipts and their ticket stubs. So
Right.
But it sucks having to do that because you don't want to question a guest, but here we are.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. It's that consistency, but at the same time, and I think some people think I'm wishy-washy, or was, or maybe I still am. But
my managers think that of me sometimes.
It's just being flexible. Like it's not black or white. Well, the policies are black and white. Yeah, man, we work in the gray. We are really living in the gray, because you can tell when somebody's trying to take advantage of you. Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
But it's.
Oh, I had an older woman who worked in my box office, and she's sort of like the theater mom, I mean, I think at every location, and that particular box office is inside the building, in the lobby, and it's perpendicular to the lobby, and so she sees everybody, and she sees most of what's going on, and a lot of companies have introduced very strict bag policies, right? For security reasons and stuff. And she would get so upset. I mean, I could usually count on a Monday morning opening up my email and seeing an email from her to me, upset because a manager like bent the policy or whatever. And sometimes, the manager probably shouldn't have done what they did. But sometimes it's like, look, you're not in their position. Like we have to be flexible sometimes. And it's not just with the bag policy.
Right.
Like a lot of things. She's like, well, they're not adhering to the rule. They're not enforcing the policies. And I'm like, look, you're not a manager. Like you don't understand, and so many people just trying to save yourself from having to eventually do this a week from now when they decide to complain through whatever format they want to complain, because one way or another, you're going to have to resolve this issue. It's either going to be you now, or it's going to be you later, or it's going to be your boss later,
Right.
And so, that gray area is where we live.
Well, and speaking of the theater mom or grandma, theater grandma, oh my God. So I had one arrested because, again, this lady comes up to us and complains. She's like, I just bought this gift card and it's got a zero value. So your cashier downstairs doesn't know what she's doing. Okay, I'm so sorry. Let's take care of you. She was going to see a movie. So we said, look, let me investigate, and then I'll take care of you now. When you come out, I'll get you a new gift card. We'll figure it out. And she was still hot, but I guess that was enough for her. She wasn't leaving. She was going to see a movie, and we are giving her free stuff. So
then she's going to be mad because she's missing her movie.
Right. So I forget. I think I went downstairs and talked to her because she had been around, this box office cashier had been around forever. And I'm like, hey, do you remember ringing this lady up for gift cards? She's like, I don't remember. Man. So I go back upstairs and I'm looking like, well, she did ring up the gift card, charged the lady $80. Oh, wait. And then it was redeemed for $80 worth of tickets immediately after that. So what this cashier was doing was she was memorizing, I guess, the last 4 digits or 5 digits of the gift card were different, but everything else was the same. So she just memorized the last 5 digits, ring up tickets that she knew she would sell. So like whatever the popular movie was, and this was before reserved seating, so she would just sell general admission. So she'd pocket the cash, and man, she had this fleece sweatshirt on, so she would palm the money and pull her sleeve over, drop it, and pull it. I mean, it was this whole thing. So as quickly as I could, I started investigating and seeing how many gift cards she had rung up and how many got redeemed. And then I called the cops.
Yeah.
And then I called AMC security.
Yeah.
And in just a brief time that I checked, it probably took me an hour, I got $3,000.
Oh my God.
So the cops show up. I tell them, I show them the proof, I show them the video, and they're like, all right, what do you want us to do? So I called AMC security and the guy still works for us. And he says, Shane, I'll leave it up to you. Yeah, well, no. He said, Shane, I'll leave it up to you. I said, well, I think I'm going to have her arrested. He's like, you're cold-hearted.
Sets an example though, man.
Yeah, it does, man. Because there's this grandma, this mother of the theater, and I call her up to the office, and she's crying, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to feed my grandkids, and this sob story. I'm like, look, $3,000. What? Can you pay it back? She's like, no.
Feeding them filet mignon.
Like, can you pay any of it back? And nothing. So I'm like, look, I don't want the money back. I'm not looking for restitution, but I gotta set an example. So sure enough, the cops took her out in handcuffs, and she's walking through the lobby. And man, I don't think we had a stealing problem for
a long time.
Yeah, man. Like, we ain't doing that.
My first week at Oakview in Omaha, I had a situation similar to that with cheese cups. So this kid was running a scam, pocketing money for, I don't know, bringing in cheese cups. It's a long thing, but I mean, my first week there, I had that, and I had a major HR issue where a guy threatened to go to the media about. And I'm like, this is how it's going to go, huh? This is going to be
right
time here. Super.
Yeah, your time in Omaha was something else.
Oh God. Yeah, I don't know, that whole supervisor issue. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
That was that in combination with being away from the family, and that was a rough year. Yeah. So,
yeah, man.
But behind me. But so when it comes to Karens, so I mean, you've been all over. Is there any particular hot spot that you've encountered? Hang on real quick, because there's a train going by.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. All right. So
I thought that might have been your phone ringing or something. Oh, that's a cool ringtone.
So any particular hotspots in the country where you've seen like an uptick in that kind of thing, or like a propensity for more severe stuff, or market, anything like that?
Certainly New York, and yeah, the volume was higher there. So, but because it's like LA. I mean, it's just the center of the movie theater. People have this expectation, and it's just that's the culture up there. You tell it like it is, and if you don't like something, you let somebody know about it. Whether I guess the difference was in New York, somebody might tell you the bathrooms are a disaster, or there's people talking, but sometimes they were just telling you that on their way out. They just like, man, fuck you and your bathrooms, I'm out of here. And all right,
we'll get on
right. Whereas in the Midwest,
they want something done.
Yeah, and they make a big stink out of it. And what's your name, and who are you, and who's your supervisor, and it's
well, for sure in Leawood.
Yeah.
I mean, I ran a couple theaters in that area, and I mean, that's my hometown. I grew up with Karen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I think my experience has shown that like your sort of upper middle class suburbs can tend to be the most filled with that kind of and just again for all the listeners to be clear, because someone sent me a meme the other day about how calling someone a Karen is anti-feminist, and it's the same as calling someone the N-word or whatever. Just to be clear, Karen is a concept. It is not always a woman. It's not always a white woman. It can be it could be a dude. It could be whatever. It's the concept of an unreasonable person. But
Right.
it does seem to be relegated to upper middle class, suburbs.
It
So
it does, and even Ward Parkway it's in that, Ward Parkway is in a very
it's a
unique
weird bubble.
situation where, yeah, a couple miles this way, it's very urban and lower middle class to where it is it's all the athletes and
Yeah,
the
very
Russell Stovers and
yeah,
just all the high end, um and certainly talk about Karens and Darrens, you said.
yep,
And yeah, I had a guy, and they're just, it's that entitlement.
yeah.
I had a guy come in, and he's there with his kid, and we had a 18 up policy, strict 18 up policy, 24/7, 7 days a week. 24/7. Yeah, there you go.
God help us all if that
And
happens.
and it was 18 up, and he's like, well, I didn't know. I bought these tickets online. Your website didn't say anything like that, so you need to let my kid in. I'm like, no, it is online, and it's very clear. So no, I don't have to let your kid in.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he's like, well, you show me. And he's got his phone in my face. I'm like, look, I'm not touching your phone. I'm telling you, if you want to go through the process and read, he's like, no, you need to prove it to me. Well, Marvin, did you know Marvin? Marvin, big guy, 6'7". He's a manager for us. He happened to be there watching a movie, and he's overhearing. So again, here's this huge dude. He's 6'7", probably 300 plus pounds. It's awesome. He comes by, and he pulled it up on his phone, and he's like, Shane, here you go. And there it was, very clear as day, like 18 up, press accept or decline. And so I show the guy, and I mean, what's he going to say?
Right.
So
but then he gets bad for making him feel stupid.
Right. And
6'7", 300-pound guy standing there.
Right. And he did. And I remember the guy getting, I don't care. And look, you make, yeah, I think he even said, you're making me look stupid. And how I missed this, and it didn't happen. And maybe it skipped that screen. I'm like, look, man, here's the policy. So he went and got a refund. And then maybe 30 minutes later, he came back and he apologized.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He's like, look, I'm sorry I lost my cool. And so it was one of those where if he wouldn't have, I'd remember it for one reason, but I remember it because he did come back and he's like, that's was my bad. I shouldn't have lost my again. Right.
Like those people that realize, like I've had similar to your situation with the gift card lady, where I've said, look, go ahead and go watch your movie, and I will look into this. And by the time you get out of your movie, we can circle back to it. And this is after getting yelled and screamed at or whatever. And a lot of times, by the time the movie is over, they've had a chance to, reflect and take a swim in Lake Mead, you know what I mean? Like, and really think about the situation and realize, oh, maybe I was being kind of a dick. And maybe they don't always apologize, but they've at least calmed down, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I understand what's going on or whatever. So that's right. When that happens.
More reasonable.
Yeah, or when they want your boss's info or whatever that they can use to complain, but then, they've gotten home, and then you never get that complaint because, they get it. So.
Right. Yeah, and I tried to tell people, as they're doing this and complaining about, I'm like, why would I do that? Why?
Yeah.
I want your money. I want you to see a movie, but I've got to follow some rules and
can't be.
Why would I want to make you upset? Why am I trying to do this? And,
what do I have
that's what. Right. Like, oh yeah, let me make you mad so you can yell at me. That's what I wanted today.
I had a guy. This is a few years ago. Who it was a weekday. It was like a Monday, and I'm walking down the hall. And this couple's walking down the hall with me, and so I turned to them. Hey, how you guys doing today? And the guy's like, oh, I'm just really pissed at your boy out there. And I was like, my boy? He goes, yeah, box, whatever. And I was like, well, what's going on? And he goes, well, he's telling me that this movie is full. And I was like, well, what auditorium are you in? And he's like, number 1 down here. And so I walk in, and I was like, and it wasn't full yet. And I said, well, but it was one of those movies that was kind of geared towards an older senior citizen crowd. And so it wasn't and it was in a very small auditorium. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility that it could be full. relatively speaking, that day. And so I was like, well, let me go look into it. And I go out there and I look at the seat map, and sure enough, I mean, it's like 65% full, which in an auditorium that size, if nobody wants to sit in the first 2 rows in the like bottom section, then yes, the top
Right.
section is going to be pretty full. And so I go back and I try to explain that guy, and he does not believe me. He goes, "You're lying to me. Your company is purposely limiting seating or whatever." And I'm like, why would we do that? What on earth would we have to gain from limiting seat? I mean, in today's day and age right now.
Right.
But like, there's nothing to gain from that. And he's just going off on me. I want a refund. Okay. So we're walking back, and then he's still going on and on and on about this. And I'm like, are you trying to tell me that I'm lying to you? And he goes, "That's exactly what I'm saying. You're a liar." And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I was like, I can give you a refund, and you can just be on your way, and we'll just move on with life.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my boss happened to be doing a site visit that day. And so he was kind of milling about in the hallway, saw this all go down. And, he's doing like one of these like hiding his face, sort of like, hanging around over by the bathroom. Don't bring me into this.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's wild that people, and because, you're probably the same way, because we've seen all of this, when I go somewhere, and I try to think of times I've lost my cool, but it's never, I'm sure it's happened, but it's never in such a manner like, I need to see your boss, I want your boss's number. It's more like, man, this did not go well. Is there anything you could do for me? And I'll even ask for something. I seem to remember, like, I was getting something done to my car, battery changed in my car, and 2 hours, 4 hours later, I'm like, "Where are you at?" He's like, "Oh, we haven't gotten to it yet." I'm like, "Dude, 4 hours, man. You said 2. It's been 2. So then they hurried up and did it. And I'm like, can I get a discount or something? Here I am 6 hours later. He's like, "Oh, sorry." And then, 2 days later, the battery died again. I brought it back, and he's like, "Oh, we didn't get it tight." And I'm like, still nothing, I didn't cause a stink, but I wanted to. I wanted to be like, "Dude, what is going on? It's not that difficult."
Yeah.
Anyway, so
sometimes the worst is when I see this, like, with, and not to pick on one or the other, but like sometimes with women, they have more of a tendency to like go off, but dudes have this way of being like uber calm in a really condescending way of like, "So let me tell you, Mr. Householder, what you're going to do about this right now."
Right.
Way, and you're like, "Man, really?"
So that brings up a good story. So Saturday in Leawood, guy comes up, and that's exactly how it was. Super condescending. He's like, "So I'm in the front row. I can't see a movie in the front row. I want a refund. I want my food refunded, but I'm going to keep it. And then I want you to get me tickets for the next show in the best seats." So I'm like, "Well, let me see your tickets." The dude had like an annual pass, so his friend worked for the theater. I said, "Well, these tickets were free, so I can't give you any cash." He said, "No, I want cash." I'm like, "Well, I can't. The system won't let me." He's like, "Well, then I want my money back on my food, and then I want the best seats." I'm like, "Well, this show's going to sell out for the next show." And, and he gave me his card. So I'm like, "You see, if it sells out, I'm not permitted to give you that." He's like, "Oh, who are you?" And I'm like, "You know what? Let me see. Oh, I see who gave you this pass. Let me contact them, and they'll contact you." Right. And he's like, "No." And he, snatches it back out of my hand. I could have contacted HR and all this. And then he left. He just disappeared. So I wound up calling the guy, or emailing the guy that gave him the pass. I knew him enough.
Yeah.
And I told him what had happened. And he's like, "All right, I'll talk to the guy. Sorry that happened." But it's one of those, there's that entitlement, like, I want cash back for something I got for free. I'm like, "Are you kidding me, man? Calm down." But then on the other hand, again, all this happened in Leawood, right? You were right.
Yeah.
This was before reserved seating, so we had holdout lines. Again, busy. I want to say Thanksgiving, Christmas is a holiday. Holdout line, just the lobby's full. And this guy comes over with his son, and he's livid. He's like, I just stood in this line, and then it went in, and I'm standing there. I didn't know. And now we go in there, and all there is the front row. Chris, I kid you not. I think I said, well, 300 other people got it right. And he did not, and he's in my face. And he's like, what did you say? Are you saying I didn't know to go in there? I'm like, look, sir, it's the only line. There's times everywhere. Everybody goes in. And his son, who's whatever, 16, 17 years old, is like, Dad, we got to go, man. Let's just go. And yeah, like he's trying to get in my face. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to hit me? Right. I mean, are you going to fight because you weren't paying attention? But I'll never forget. Yeah, like 300 people got it right and you didn't. I don't, what do you want me to tell you? Everybody else was right and you stood in the wrong line because you're better than everybody. I don't know.
It always seems to come down to the entitlement, the worst ones. Yeah. It's because for whatever reason, they're smarter, better, whatever.
Right. So. And I often wonder if, I'm assuming he's an accountant or an engineer, or and not to call those people out. My dad's an engineer, and my good friends are accountants, and my neighbors, and I love them to death. Now, some of them have worked in retail, but it's the people that haven't worked in retail, hospitality, service. They just don't know. Yeah. And sometimes that's why we have the best stories. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure if you're building rockets or saving lives, you probably have some good stories. But, I talk to people that, you talk to people that work in an office, like, hey, how was work this week? Yeah. Crunch some numbers, I looked at some reports. Because, you just haven't had, and I think that's why people that do this can really like it and get addicted to it, because
there's something.
I got so many stories after, a quarter century of talking to people and staff, and I could go on and on. I mean, I barely scratched the surface. I'm like, am I going to have enough to talk about when I talk to Chris?
I'm boring the shit out of Mrs. Fry right now because I'm a glorified janitor right now because I don't have employees. I don't have customers. I'm just cleaning a building and I come home. How's your day? I mean, I cleaned some cabinets.
Right.
Yeah. I don't have anything to talk about. I mean, I'm not stressed, but that's about it, So
right.
I don't know.
The stories, man.
Rather be getting the stories. I mean, I posted a meme a while back that it's like, God, I'd give anything to be getting yelled at by a Karen right now, just because it's an activity. So
you need some interaction, because that's I have, not unique, but the people that go from retail to the field to the office. I don't have those stories to talk about. When I come home from work, what'd you do today? I worked on some training. I was in a meeting. We talked about automated box offices and cash accepting ABOs and this new corn dogs that we're going to sell and how we're going to create a video for that. And that's and then you talk to the people in the field and they're like, oh my God, people are just insane. And why are they yelling at me? And the lines.
Like on one hand, you can complain about it, but on the other hand, and you look back on it fondly in a weird way. It's sort of unhealthy to a degree. It's almost masochistic a little bit because
right. But it is. It's stories and it is. And I'll tell you, the first week. I went from New Orleans. I was an hourly manager in New Orleans, making $6.80 an hour as a manager.
Yeah,
$6.80. Transferred to Houston, again, Willowbrook 10. And my first week there, I'm the new manager, so I'm closing with another manager, sort of figuring it out, learning how. We get a call or we hear something on the radio. We had security every night. We had a armed security guard every night. We heard something on the radio. It's just like a blip. And so we called for the security guard. Hey, are you there? Didn't respond. And that was very unlike him. So so me and the usher went outside into the parking lot, and it was kind of in this strip mall, and there was a building in front of us. I don't know, it was a weird setup. So he goes one way, I go the other, and we thought, yeah, he's changing a tire or giving somebody a jump start or something. That's what kind of guy he was. Very nice, a little older. Didn't see anything. So the usher and I come back in and meet in the courtyard, which is outside, right outside the box office and the doors, and 13, 14-year-old kids pointing a gun at us.
What?
And he says, just walk away. And the usher and I just ran inside the doors, ran into the office, called the cops. We're like, we just got a gun pointed at us. So what had happened was, well, they figured three gang members must have been doing an initiation and had to get a gun. So they wound up jumping our security guard, pull him into the ladies' room.
Jeez.
He struggled. They took his gun. They handcuffed him with his cuffs around the stall and then took off. And I guess we saw it as it was. But after that, then I get all these stories about a new manager had been shot and killed in Houston.
Oh, Jesus.
And from that same theater, that Willowbrook 10, the senior manager had been kidnapped. They took him in a car, drove him out to some empty parking lot. And the story I got was they put a gun to his head, pulled the trigger, and it went click, click. Oh, and they said, don't move, we'll be back. They took off. I guess he was able to, take his, they covered his eyes. He took that off and he started running down the street. But every time he saw a car, he thought it was them, so he'd have to hide. Yeah. I'm like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was one of those stories. I guess I'll say I blocked it out because it wasn't until my mom, so that was 96. Mm-hmm. A couple years ago, somebody was asking, oh, you have any good stories from the field? And I'm like, oh, not really. Like, it's pretty boring. I sell tickets and popcorn. Yeah. And my mom's like, how about that time you got that gun pulled on you? I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah.
Jesus. Well, on that note, we've exceeded the hour mark, and so time does fly.
It does.
We're gonna wrap it up, but I think we have a lot more to talk about. So I'd love to have you back on again if you're cool with that. So,
I would love to be back. Yes.
Good. All right. Well, with that said, I think we're gonna end this. So thank you very, very much for coming on. It was a blast.
Thanks for having me.
You bet, man. I'll talk to you later.
Good.
That's the podcast, folks. If you're a fan of Karen Isn't Always Right, you can show your support in two ways. First, please share with your friends and get them listening. Also, please feel free to donate by going to anchor.fm/Chris-Fry, that's Frey, /support. Please visit KIARpodcast.com, KIAR podcast.com, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. New episodes are posted weekly on KIARpodcast.com, Anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple, and pretty much wherever you can listen to a podcast. The views and opinions on this podcast are solely that of the guest and the host and are not representative of any organizations or individuals. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.